Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark Roden, and in today's video I shaved last night and I feel like a child, so if you're gonna make fun of me in the comments, go ahead. If you step outside though and there's a magic landmine sitting underneath your welcome mat, I don't know, it was probably Tony Hawk, probably him, not me. But either way, in today's video, we're going to be going over the good, the bad, and the ugly on the new Edge Ford Mustang GT. Specifically the new Edge, not the SN95s. I know they're technically the same thing, and everybody's going to be all like, beep, but I want to talk about specifically the new Edge. Okay, partner, cry about it. And the way these bids work, in case you're new here, is first I go over everything you kind of need to know about the car. That's just basic things like the engines, trim levels, body styles, if it's rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, etc., etc. Then I get into what the community tends to do with them in terms of modifying them, whether they drift them, drag race them, circuit race them, whatever it may be. And then I finally get into the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we'll talk about that when we get there. And then at the end of the video, I tell you whether or not I think you should buy the car, depending on the current situation that you're in. Without further ado, let's get right into the good, the bad, and the ugly on the new Edge Ford Mustang GT. So like I said, first up, buddy, we're starting with all the basic info of these cars. So let's talk about the years made and the generation. Well, it was made between the years 1999 to 2004, and it is a fourth generation of the Ford Mustang. But it's the fourth gen facelift. Technically the SN95 is the fourth gen Mustang. This is also the fourth gen, but it's the facelifted SN95. It's a little bit confusing there, but it shouldn't be too hard to understand. As for the trim levels, the car has a lot of different trim levels depending on the year that you get, but whenever I go over trim levels on this channel, I pretty much only care about the engines and power outputs. So basically, we're just going to be going with the engines and powers that those engines produce. All the other stuff is things that are small to me, and maybe they affect you, but they're just things like, oh, does it have a leather interior or cloth interior, power windows or crank windows, a sunroof or not a sunroof, like things like that, little tiny things that don't really matter to me. So let's go over the base model, which comes with a 3.8 liter V6 that makes 190 to 193 horsepower depending on the year that you get it. Obviously later years have more power, but I mean, it's a 3 horsepower difference. I wouldn't really worry about that. Literally, just while you're filling up with gas, put like a fart of V85 in there and you got that 3 horsepower difference. Next up is the GT model, which comes with a 4.6 liter V8, making 260 horsepower across all 5 years of being built, and the best is the Cobra, which makes 320 to 390 horsepower, depending on the year it was built, and that's actually a significant difference, so definitely look into that if you're planning on buying a Cobra. If you're planning on buying a Cobra, you probably aren't watching this video, though, because you have a lot of money and are probably a lot smarter than I am. You do have special edition cars, like the Mach 1, the Bullet, SVT, Cobra R, but I'm not going to get into those. They're very niche, so I'm just going to go over the ones that most people are actually going to be looking at buying. As for the body styles, it is available as a coupe and a convertible only. As for the drivetrains, it is rear-wheel drive only. As for the transmissions, it is available in automatic and manuals. If you get an automatic Mustang, I don't want to be friends with you. As for the price, it ranges anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000, I would say, on average, but obviously that number can be massively skewed in any direction depending on what you're looking for. If you're getting an SVT Cobra R and you expect it to be $10,000, you are, my friend, mentally challenged. There is no universe where you're buying an SVT Cobra R for 10 grand. On top of that, even if you're getting this a regular GT, if it's got like 30,000 miles and is in pristine condition, bone stock, manual transmission, probably not going to be 10K either. It'll probably be closer to 20, 25K. It all just depends on the condition you're getting, the year you're getting, the model that you're getting, etc. But I would say on average, you're looking at spending anywhere from $2,000 for an absolutely horrible example of a V6, all the way up to $10,000 for a decent coupe manual V8 GT. As for the reliability and the gas mileage, it's very reliable. It's got the same motor as the Crown Vic in the GT models. The V6s aren't as reliable, however, as the V8s, so if you are strictly caring about reliability, go for that. Also, the V6s get 26 miles per gallon combined, and the V8s get 18 miles per gallon combined, which is actually not that bad for a V8, and for a V6, that's decent. But now let's get into what the community tends to do with these bad mother jammers when they start modifying them. As for the drifting scene, it's actually starting to get the love that it does deserve, but it still definitely needs more time to shine. People are starting to pick these things up and go drifting with them, which makes sense. They're like the American 240SX, so that's great. As for the rally/off-road scene, This is obviously not seen in rally racing because it's a rear-wheel drive muscle car that's low to the ground. Makes sense. As for the street racing boys, the quiet plates. Hey man, look how cool I am. I drove at night one time and turned off my headlights. They're very, very popular, obviously, right now. They're cheap American V8 muscle cars. That's pretty much exactly what you want when street racing. As for the track racing community, the circuit racing boys, it's again starting to get a little bit more love, but not anywhere near where it needs to be. People are starting to finally realize that muscle cars can corner, and especially one like this where it's so lightweight, and so that's cool. But yeah, it still needs to get definitely some more support for the track racing circuit boys. And then finally, the stance or show cars, whatever. They're starting to stance these again, but I personally would not do that. I would just keep it mean looking. I think it looks way better if it's like aggressive and mean and muscle car looking rather than like stancing a new Edge Mustang. I don't really get the hype behind that, but yeah, they're doing it now. But now let's get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the way that this works is first I go over the good, which are just things that are great about the car. They're selling points about the car. Then I go into the bad, which aren't actually bad things. It's just a fun play on words. The bad is kind of the middle ground area where it's like, if it affects you, then yeah, take it into consideration when going to buy one. But if it doesn't affect you, then who cares? Just don't even worry about it. And then the ugly are things that are actually going to be problems that you're going to have to address with the car. Without further ado, let's go right into the good. First up is the price. They're one of the cheapest muscle cars out there right now, especially one that's this reliable, decently good on power, lightweight. Like it's a really good price for what it is. Next up is the aftermarket support is through the roof performance wise. Notice I says performance wise specifically there because we'll get into exterior, but yeah, it has a lot of performance parts out there for it. Next is the community tends to be very inviting. Just don't rice out your freaking Mustang and you should be good. Most of the guys in there are very talkative, very nice, very helpful, and that's obviously really nice to have. Next is they're only going to continue to rise in price if you get a decent one. This could even apply to one that's kind of in poopy condition as long as it's low miles and rust free, and then you just kind of like fix it up a little bit, and then yeah, now it'll be worth something. But for the most part, if you're buying one that's a relatively decent condition, keep it decent condition and you can sell it for a lot more in a couple of years. Next up is the reliability engine wise is through the roof. I said engine wise specifically there because we'll get into the other reasons, but as for the engine, the 4.6 V8, it's a decent, reliable freaking motor there. Next up is the price for parts is low. Just like the car itself, the parts are low, especially when it talking about engine parts, since they also have the Crown Vic engine, which again was used in like 5 billion Crown Vics out there, so there's a lot of parts out there. Next is they are kind of slept on right now, so people may not expect you to be fast. If you're a sleeper boy, if you want a sleeper car, maybe this is an option for you. Obviously, some people are going to know it's a Mustang at the end of the day, so they're going to recognize that it's going to be a quick car, but you might be able to catch a couple people off guard. And next is they're actually quite decent for handling purposes since they're so light for muscle cars, so that's obviously circuit racing, drifting, whatever it may be, anything that isn't just a straight line, this car actually can do pretty decent at it, as opposed to the basic muscle car, which cannot take a corner for its life. This car actually can. And finally, for the good is the space is actually not as bad as you would think for a two-door sports car. That's what all the people online are saying. I'm going to take their word for it. But yeah, they're saying that you could actually fit a decent amount of stuff in the trunk, and if you're a taller gentleman, you won't feel that cramped in the actual car itself. So there you go. But now let's get into the bad, which I want to reiterate because people do not understand when I say this. The bad are not things I'm actually saying are bad about the car. They're just things that you might want to take into consideration. I say this every single one of my good, bad, and uglies, and there's still going to be at least one person down below that takes one of the things I'm about to say and is like, you're an idiot, actually, because that's actually not that big of a deal. It's like, listen, I know it's the middle ground here. All right, calm down. First up is the sound. I put the sound here at the beginning of the bad and every one of the good, bad, and uglies because it's obviously 100% up to personal preference. So here's a clip of a V8. Next is the looks. Again, this is obviously all just personal preference. That's the reason why it's here in the bad. Some people might like it, some people might not like it. I personally think they look actually really good, especially for a Mustang. Ooh, shots fired. I'm not a big fan of Mustangs. Next is the aftermarket support exterior wise. I mentioned earlier with the performance category that, yeah, it doesn't really have the most mods for the exterior. They never really were modified that crazy when it comes to like being flashy body kits and stuff like that. They're so just don't expect to make like the craziest show car out there. Next is they're going to be a little bit sketchy to go looking at that is going to buy them. A lot of the owners didn't take care of these cars because they were kind of cheap and were kind of, when they came out, well, not when they came out, but a little while after they came out, kind of regarded as not the best muscle car. And so people just kind of neglected them. So just be careful going to look at them. There might be some hidden damage. On top of that, I have met a lot of people that own these things that are not good people to talk to. So be careful in terms of like getting robbed because some of them might do that to you. Next up is the sound system has that basic 2000s American car raspiness to it. Every 2000s American car, whether it's a truck, SUV, or a muscle car like this, it has that weird raspy noise to it every time there's a bass. It sounds like plastic rattling all around. This car has it as well. Next is apparently the outer tie rods just suck. They just plain suck on these. There's no way around it. Next is the engine is good for making power, but not the best, and the stock power output isn't really anything crazy. Just keep that in mind. Like, yes, this can obviously be a race car if you put enough time, effort into it. It can be a fast little drag car, don't get me wrong, but there are better options out there if that's what you're going for. Next up is the cup holders are small, but they are there. That's always kind of a plus, but trust me when I say this, man, you do not want cup holders that are useless. I drive an Integra, and the cup holders are pretty much useless in that. Whenever I open up a good old can of Arnie Palmy Arizona iced tea, half and half tea, half lemonade, I cannot put it in my cup holder, and it drives me nuts because I'm trying to drive a manual while also holding on to an Arizona iced tea, and it's next to impossible. So keep that in mind. Next up is the car is rear-wheel drive only. Obviously, that only really affects people that live in areas with winter, but yeah, if you live in an area in winter, maybe don't buy this as a daily. Next is the convertible tops are probably going to be leaking. It's a freaking 25 plus year old car. It's gonna have leaking convertible tops. Every single one of them do. And finally, for the bad is all the problems that come with age, just in general, like wiring issues, leaks, rust, cracks, overall just things not working like they should. Okay, so just be sure to check the basics when going to look at one. They're old. It's crazy to say it, I know, but these cars are 25 years old. They can be registered as a classic now. Okay, they are classic cars. If you're going to look at one, just be careful. There's gonna be things that are almost unavoidable at this point because they're just that old, unfortunately. But now let's go into the ugly, and these are just problems with the car that you're going to have to address, and there's only 2 for this car, so that's pretty decent. But first, for the ugly is that these cars have a lot of problems with their intake manifolds. Ooh, there's actually 3, because I just thought of one that I'm going to add to the end of this. But yeah, for these cars have a lot of problems with their intake manifolds. They leak, they don't work correctly, and it can always be a big old nightmare to do intake manifold work. That could get pretty expensive depending on the car. Next is sometimes these cars have a very rough idle, and it's apparently kind of hard to find out what it is because a lot of things can cause it. In my opinion, based off of what I was doing on research, the first thing I would check is my intake manifold, but that seems to be not what people are checking. They check all kinds of different sensors. The camshaft position sensor apparently is bad. The EGR valve is pretty bad. That it has a couple of things that could go wrong and then cause it to have a rough idle, which is obviously not fun. And finally, for the ugly, this is the thing I just thought of, is that this is an early 2000s muscle car. They have a horrible automatic transmission. I mean, I have to mention how bad automatics are in almost all my good, bad, and uglies, because every good, bad, and ugly I make is usually on like a 90s, early 2000s cars, and back then the automatics were absolutely useless, and it's the exact same with this car. Just don't get an auto Mustang GT. Like, just get a manual. Be a man. It takes 1 week to learn. 1 week. But my final thoughts, do I think you should buy a new Edge Mustang GT depending on the current situation that you yourself are currently in? Well, let's go over that real quick. If you are the type of guy that's just looking for a regular daily driver, you're not a car guy in any way whatsoever, you do not care if your car is cool, you just want to get from point A to point B, and that is absolutely it. No, this is a horrible option for you. It's V8, it's rear-wheel drive, and it's small. It's not a good option. If you are all you care about is getting from point A to point B, get a freaking Subaru Forester or Subaru Outback, Civic, Camry, Acura TL. Like, get something that's just reliable and does the job. You don't need something like this. As for the car guys that are looking for dailies, because obviously we tell ourselves we're buying a daily driver, but in the back of our minds we know that it's going to be at least somewhat fun. Honestly, it's not the worst option out there, but in my opinion, if you're looking at buying a new Edge Mustang for the day, oh boy, my dogs are barking. But if you're looking at buying a new Edge Mustang for the daily aspect of it, I would honestly just get a Crown Vic, because it does everything the new Edge does, but it has 4 doors and more space. That's That's my personal opinion, but it's honestly not a terrible option. As for the guys that are looking for just like a Sunday cruiser, something to buy, store in the garage, take it out once a week, maybe sell it 10 years down the line for a lot more money, it's kind of like an investment type of thing. Yes, if the one you own is in good condition. Otherwise, just enjoy the freaking car, man. They're not like that special yet. Just enjoy it, you know. And then finally, for the people that are looking for a race car or a project car, something to build up into a absolute beast, it's definitely, this is its best application out there. These things can be fun as hell no matter what you're building it for. But again, it's hard for me to say like, yeah, this is the best option out there, when in my opinion there are better options for you if you're looking for something in particular. Like if you're looking for like a drag car for pretty dirt cheap, an American V8 drag car, I would just recommend a Catfish Camaro. If you're looking for a drift car, I would recommend something like a 350Z or a G35 or a Miata or 240. But it does do all those things decently well. So I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I actually think it's a great idea. This car is commonly in my like top 5 for best cars that are under 5K right now. But it's kind of like weird. It's in this weird little gray area where it's like every place that you're trying to build it for always kind of has a better option for you. But again, I mean, that's not, obviously most people don't really care too much about getting the absolute best option. So if that's you, if you just want something that's fun, that you want to enjoy and want to build, that's all that really matters. Don't buy a Catfish Camaro just because I told you to buy a Catfish Camaro for drag racing if you don't like Catfish Camaros. If you'd rather have a new Edge Mustang, it can absolutely shine and outperform a lot of other cars in that class. But ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's video of the good, the bad, and the ugly on the new Edge Ford Mustang GT, Cobra, and base model. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the comment section down below. I've said this before on all my good, bad, and uglies, but I'm going to say it again. The only way I get cars for good, bad, and uglies is based off of comments. So if somebody leaves a comment like, hey, can you make a good, bad, and ugly on this car? That's the only way I do good, bad, and uglies. I don't ever go in my mind and like, what should I make a good, bad, and ugly on today? And then I decide. I don't ever do that. I always just look at my comments real quick, see the first one that pops up on my screen, and that's the good, bad, and ugly I do. So if you want to see a car that do good, bad, and ugly, leave a comment, because if you're just sitting there praying that somebody else will comment or that I'll miraculously do it one day, you're probably going to be waiting for a while. At the same time, though, I do get a lot of recommendations for good, bad, and uglies, so if you do leave a comment, that does not mean it's an instant lock that I'm going to 100% do that car pretty soon. Chances are, there's a good chance I might never do it. I have hundreds and hundreds, and I have thousands and thousands of comments of people asking me to do good, bad, and uglies on different cars. So obviously, I'm not going to ever be able to do all those cars. But it is if you want to see a car, it's the quickest way to. It's the closest you're gonna get. Is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.